Truckers blockaded highways in some 20 Brazilian states on Monday as tires burned in protest of Jair Bolsonaro's runoff election defeat to former President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva. Many truckers endorsed Bolsonaro, who, as of Monday evening, was yet to concede the election, raising fears the far-right nationalist might contest the results. Bolsonaro spent Monday at the presidential palace without appearing in public and remaining silent. But his communications minister said Bolsonaro was working to determine measures to clear the highways and said the president would publicly address his defeat on Tuesday. Prior to the vote, he repeatedly made baseless claims the electoral system was open to fraud. But tens of thousands of jubilant Lula supporters didn't wait for official word from the president. They took to the streets of Sao Paulo on Sunday night to celebrate a stunning comeback for Lula, the 77-year-old former metal worker who governed Brazil from 2003 to 2010. His electoral win follows a spell in prison for corruption convictions that were later annulled. In his victory speech on Sunday evening, Lula called on his rival to do the right thing.
The defeated president should have called me to recognize my victory. Up until now, he hasn't called. I don't know if he will or if he will concede.
Lula has vowed to overturn many of Bolsonaro's policies, including pro-gun measures and weak protection of the Amazon rainforest. Even before he is due to take office on January 1st, it was said President-elect Lula will send representatives to next month's COP27 United Nations Climate Summit in Egypt. Bolsonaro, a far-right nationalist who has said he modeled his presidency after Donald Trump's, has echoed the former U.S. leader's baseless allegations of fraud in the 2020 U.S. election.
There's fraud.
Having repeatedly questioned Brazil's electronic voting machines, Bolsonaro has argued, without proof, that they are susceptible to manipulation. International election observers said Sunday's election was conducted fairly and efficiently. The Supreme Electoral Court declared Lula won 50.9% of votes, against 49.1% for Bolsonaro. With that, Bolsonaro became the first Brazilian incumbent ever to lose a presidential election.
Air raid sirens blared across Ukraine and explosions rang out in Kyiv on Monday. Plumes of black smoke spiraled into the sky above the capital as Russian missiles rained down in renewed air attacks. Ukrainian officials said energy infrastructure was hit, including hydroelectric dams, knocking out power, heat and water supplies. Many residents in the capital rushed to the shops to buy water after the strikes left some 80% of Kyiv residents without running taps, according to Mayor Vitaly Klitschko.
I have a feeling the Russian aggressors want to freezing people in this winter. They propose himself as war against military, but right now this war have directly impact in civil population. They want to make the people without heating, without water, without electricity. In the winter, they want to freezing the whole population in our hometown. It's genocide. No, in other words.
In Ukraine's second city, Kyiv, underground trains and trolleybuses ground to a halt due to power cuts. The local governor claimed 5 Russian missiles had hit the region, including critical infrastructure. Ihor Polovikov is a trolleybus driver.
I react as I should. I'm fed up with them. But nobody will give up just like that. We got used to it. It's the 9th month of war. Everyone has understood that this is necessary.
Russia's missile strikes during the Monday morning rush hour repeat a tactic it has pursued this month of targeting Ukrainian civilian infrastructure, especially power stations. For the past 3 weeks, it's been conducting a campaign of attacks using expansive long-range missiles and cheap Iranian-made suicide drones that fly at a target and detonate. Iran has repeatedly denied supplying weapons to Russia for the war in Ukraine. Ukraine's military said it had shot down 44 of 50 Russian missiles in Monday's shelling. Authorities claim 18 targets were hit in strikes in 10 Ukrainian regions, and that most of those were energy infrastructure.
Video obtained by Reuters showed a huge crowd of visitors stranded at Disney's Shanghai resort on Monday after the park abruptly suspended operations to comply with COVID-19 prevention measures. All visitors at the time of the announcement were told they could not leave the resort until they returned a negative COVID test. Reuters reporter Josh Horowitz was camped outside the subway station near the entrance of the park.
Normally at this hour, it's about 8 p.m., we would see a steady trickle of guests leaving the park and hopping on the subway to head home. However, it's dead silent. Many guests, hundreds of guests, have been stuck inside the park for several hours. Our team here has been waiting for about 3 hours, and with us are several other individuals that are waiting for friends or family or loved ones. We've been told just by talking to security and then some Disney staffers who have steadily been given official permission to leave that the test results have been received. So anyone who has been tested inside the park throughout maybe about 6 or 7 hours ago, they should know what their results are, if it's positive or negative. But as far as we know, we don't know if there has been any confirmed positive cases since the mass testing took place. And we also have yet to receive any official updates as to when the guests will be let out of the park.
The lockdown at Shanghai Disney comes as COVID restrictions are once again gripping China, threatening new disruptions to daily life as well as to the global economy and critical supply chains. A Foxconn plant in central China that makes iPhones and employs about 200,000 people has been on lockdown for days. Many people have fled the facility, some climbing fences to escape, prompting nearby cities to draw up plans to isolate workers returning to their hometowns. A source with direct knowledge of the matter told Reuters that iPhone production at the facility could drop as much as 30% next month, and that Foxconn is working to boost production at another factory to make up for the shortfall. Rising case numbers from outbreaks across China have prompted a tightening of local curbs and lockdowns. At the recent twice-in-a-decade Communist Party Congress, President Xi Jinping reiterated China's commitment to its zero-COVID policy, disappointing investors and countless Chinese frustrated by lockdowns, travel curbs, and testing.
Defense attorneys for the Trump Organization arrived at a Manhattan court on Monday for opening statements in the criminal trial accusing the organization of tax fraud.
What do you want? Looking forward to a good first day. What do you want the jury to know? Just be fair.
Prosecutors say 2 units of former U.S. President Donald Trump's real estate empire cheated authorities over a 15-year period ending in 2021. But company defense lawyers put the focus squarely on former chief financial officer Alan Weisselberg, who worked for Trump for nearly half a century, accusing him of betraying the firm and succumbing to greed. Prosecutors say executives, including Weisselberg, didn't properly report perks like rent, car leases, and bonuses. Prosecutors said Trump at one time personally paid for Weisselberg's grandchildren's private school tuition. Weisselberg has already pleaded guilty and agreed to testify for the prosecution in exchange for a 5-month jail sentence. In his opening statement, Trump payroll corporation lawyer Michael Vanderveen said Weisselberg was acting on his own and out of pure self-interest. Weisselberg did it for Weisselberg, he said. Greed made him cheat on his taxes, hide his deeds from his employer, and betray the trust built over nearly 50 years. But prosecutor Susan Hoffinger said while the former CFO was a prime beneficiary, the scheme was bigger than him, that the company benefited by keeping top executives happy and saving on some taxes. Everybody wins here, she said. Of course, everybody but the tax authorities. If convicted, the Trump Organization could face up to $1.6 million in fines, plus further complications to its ability to do business. Trump was not charged in this case, but it is among the mounting legal troubles he faces as he weighs another presidential run. The criminal trial is separate from the $250 million civil lawsuit filed by New York's Attorney General in September that accused Trump, 3 of his children, and his company of overvaluing real estate assets and Trump's net worth to banks and insurers. Trump is also facing a federal criminal investigation into the improper removal of government documents from the White House. Both units of the Trump Organization, which runs hotels and golf courses around the world, have pleaded not guilty to the charges. A unanimous verdict is required for conviction on each count of tax fraud, scheming to defraud, and falsifying business records.
U.S. stocks lost ground on Monday, but closed out a blockbuster October that saw a major rebound for equities. For the session, though, the Dow lost more than 1/3%, the S&P 500 fell 0.75%, while the Nasdaq dropped a full percent. But for the month, the Dow soared nearly 14%, its biggest monthly percentage gain since January of 1976, as investors grew optimistic that Federal Reserve policymakers might soon pull back on its aggressive campaign to fight inflation. This week, investor focus turns to the Fed's latest policy meeting when it's widely expected to raise interest rates by another 75 basis points. But investors are looking for any signals on the Fed's future intentions. Russell Evans, managing principal and chief investment officer at Avitas Wealth Management, said hopes the Fed may soften its inflation stance may be wishful thinking.
He said that there was going to be pain to come, right? And that was how the market reacted in late August and September. Pain to come, and they would cause whatever pain they had to cause in order to bring inflation down. Then all of a sudden, in the second half of October, we got positive again. And positive, the market got positive that the Fed, maybe that they're going to pivot in December, et cetera, et cetera. I don't know that I personally believe that. I think that there's serious work to be done. I think that they will. I think that they will take as long as they need to take if it goes right into December. Like I said, I don't have any way of knowing, but my belief is that the market's going to be serious. The Fed's going to be serious about slowing down the economy right into December.
Major stock moves on Monday included Apple. Shares lost ground after a Reuters report said production of its iPhones could slump by as much as 30% next month due to tightening health restrictions in China. Megacap growth names such as Amazon and Google owner Alphabet, which have been under pressure in the rising rate environment, also ended lower.